Okay, and I suppose that leads me in, Kieran, what Pat said there about some people deciding that they may or may not open. I mean, what does the government's roadmap for reopening mean for visitor attractions? When can visitor attractions open? And do you think that many will remain closed this year due to the lack of international visitors?
I think the last question probably links back to what Colm and Pat have just said, is that there's a bit of a circle here regarding getting clarity on exactly, like the roadmap. And when I watched Leo last Friday night, I suppose the positives is it's good to have a roadmap. It was phased, all of that jazz, but there is a lack of clarity. And with visitor centres, like there's a big challenge, because like visitor centres rely on visitors, rely on tourists, and the international tourists, certainly for this year, and I would say for probably a substantial proportion of next year, won't be here. So in our business, in the very micro business in the trust, but probably representative of Kilkenny as well, is that we rely on both. We rely on the international and domestic. We probably have a reputation for the domestic visitor, maybe more than some of our competitors, which is, as in competitors around the country, which is an advantage. So on the roadmap, it says museums. But the Medieval Mine Museum can reopen on the 20th of July. But there are all these rules around social distancing that Colm mentioned. In Butler House, we sort of fall into the waiting area as well. So there's lots of ambiguity around that. So technically, we could reopen in July. But then to reopen, there is the first sort of big challenge is to make, as Pat says, to meet the social distance and physical distance and health and hygiene rules. And that's going to mean re-engineering the business. So the capacity of the museum literally will change dramatically with what's happening. And we would have had one of our obviously more popular services there would have been the guided tour, but you're trying to get your head around the guided tour. What does that mean now? How many people can be there? 2 meters distance. You've all, little aspects of the tour there. We spent 120,000 last year in bringing the human remains back. And that's going to be completely different proposition. The Kilkenny Room, the Road Chapel. So that's just a micro for us. At a macro level, I would say a lot of tourist business will not reopen this year. The season, especially for the smaller ones, is gone. And I think for us, again, as Colm has alluded to there, we need both direction and we need leadership. And I think leadership is needed here in Kilkenny. So for us, we're the operators of the museum. The owners of the museum are the local authority. And I think the domestic market is going to need to be incentivized. For a lot of us, if you think of just our own behavior, is that we'll climb up the Eiffel Tower and we'll pay lots of money, but going to your local visitor attraction is just nearly something that the visitor or the tourist does. So to incentivize domestic people to come, we're going to have to incentivize them and incentivize them very quickly. And that incentivizing, if we cut to the chase, probably means some degree of value promotions, value proposition, and probably financial luring. So if I take the museum, our base product there is €8 for a tour, young guided tour. I'd love to be able to go out, be positive, be enthusiastic, recommend to the board that we go back, take a positive view, but we would need support there. And that's where I think the government at a national level and at a local level need to show leadership now, because we'll already be looking at increased costs, even in setup costs. All this hygiene, PPE, perspex, signage and all of that, that's an additional cost before we get going. That's even before we get to any discussion on other costs and working capital and all of that. So I think there is local and national leadership needed, and I'll certainly be looking for that from our local leaders here.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. I know it's interesting. I know the Chamber have been in discussions with central government recently and spoken to them in length about putting in place regional task forces that will help manage different areas out of the emergency quicker or more different to other emergencies, and I suppose recognize the idea that Kilkenny might be different to Galway, and that's something that's being proposed at the moment. So the next question I have for the three of you is, between the Vintners, the Hotel Federation, the Chamber, the Restaurant Association, there's been so many things called for and requested. I mean, VAT, a waiver or relief in VAT, rents, bank supports, insurance, wage supports, liquidity and grants, commercial rates is huge, utilities, and there's also been a call, as it's happened in some countries, to increase the public spaces, to have more outdoor seating for the hospitality sector. It's a really big menu. What do you think? I'll start with you, Colin. What do you think are the most achievable and the most important?
Colin, we've got to ask for them all, because we certainly know we need a mix of them. I don't know, and until we know what the rules of the game are, we can't predict even what our forecasts and our budgets will tell us. So it's really difficult to say how much assistance we need. All I know is that businesses are going to need to dig out in a big way, obviously. Needless to say, we're going to be at anywhere between 35% of our turnover this year to maybe the best of us at 65. So the same inputs can't go into lesser business without assistance. So of course we'll lose jobs in our industry, and that's very sad, but we have to try to minimize the number of those. And businesses need the assistance. So I completely stand over the call for 0% VAT for 12 months. But if the government are going to up and give us the wage subsidy scheme continuing, well, then you could let that zero rate VAT go. You know, it's going to be any one of them probably won't do the job, but some blend of them has to be brought in. The 9% VAT showed all its success with those 90,000 jobs, and it wasn't as if all industry was rising. It wasn't. Tourism rose. Tourism increased the job numbers, and we were at the right level for Ireland. Look at the European position. And I'm sorry, I know the IHF are banging on about this forever, but there's a good reason we are. And that is because why would Ireland be anywhere only mid-table in the European stakes of that, instead of being the top 3 or 4 in all of Europe, when we're trying to compete with all the other countries? So I really believe it should be brought back to 9% permanently, and let Ireland do its bit. Let us do what we do well, hospitality. But as regards the likes of the rates, 3 months. So that's like saying that for as long as we're closed, we'll look after you guys, but she'll be back flying then. Our year is destroyed. All of the money that we make in July and August at the peak time, that carries us across the lean time of the rest of the year. And it's like there's someone doesn't have any appreciation of that. But I am confident that they're going to give slowly, but I am confident that the government, they're not going to let 1 in 10 jobs go, or an industry that supports 1 in 10. They are not. So I really believe that they're just moving, I think, too slowly, but maybe it's as fast as they're able to. But I've confidence that the guidelines for how our workers can be safe and our customers can be safe is going to come. The financial assistance through rates, through the VAT, through wage subsidy, I think these things will come. It's just painfully slow trying to get them out of Pasco or whoever else has to say yes to. And there is a big danger in that. Lots of small businesses will just turn their back on the industry and just get disillusioned with a future at all. And that would be our biggest disaster, because we all need each other to be a viable tourism product. So they've got to move a bit quicker, I think, and that's where we've got to keep the pressure on them. But I am hopeful and confident that we've 8 weeks before the restaurants can open. we're all pushing to get some sort of general national consensus on what the rules and regulations around the social distancing. Can we put up perspex between booths of seats? Can we not? Do chefs have to be 2 meters apart? Do they have to be suited up to work as teams? Some jobs actually have to be done in teams, etc. I believe all that will come in the next 2 to 3 weeks and will give us the clarity. But it's really scary waiting for it, and with the possibility of us not having all of that. That's really essential now, in my view.
Thank you, Colin. Yeah, amazingly enough, I read the other day that there are 28 countries in the EU that have lower VAT rates for tourism than ourselves, which is a bit mind-boggling. Pat, can I ask you the same question? So, what sort of supports are there any supports that are more important than others? Are there some that are needed quicker?
Yes, and yes, Colin. As late as this morning, I was on social media saying that to Owen Murphy that a rebate of rates for a time when we were closed is not support. That is the least we should be getting from that, and a credit guarantee for small businesses that are already borrowed and that do not have the capacity to borrow anymore in normal times, never mind in emergency times, is not support. Those kind of things do not constitute supports. And echoing everything that Colin said in regard to the number of people employed, the damage that will be done if even half of those end up on long-term social welfare, and the damage to businesses. Like the end game here is if a significant number of hospitality and other businesses fail at some point in the next 12 months, the government will end up in the same position as they were 10 years ago of actually having to bail out the banks, because every one of these businesses has overdrafts or has loans or has other facilities, and the banks have no capacity either to sustain them. So and I do not think it would be a tenable position to have the government let businesses fail and then end up having to bail out the banks again. It doesn't make any sense at all. I do agree with Colin that they're moving slow. They're trying to be too cautious and too careful and to decide when the right time is. Now, if they want restaurants to open in 7.5 weeks now, that means we have to be ready in 6 weeks, because we will have to retrain people. We need to invest. It's not just a matter of saying, can we manage our cash burn between now and then and just reopen the door. There's a huge amount of prep, servicing, training, and investment in all the kind of things that are going to help to make the place safer. So it isn't a simple, and the day we open, all the people who have given us forbearance on loans, suppliers who haven't collected February's and March's accounts yet, they're all going to be standing outside the door fairly soon after that too. And basically, it's going to be a house of cards, because if businesses fail, the suppliers fail, nobody gets paid, everyone's in trouble, and you end up back bailing out the banks. It's an untenable situation. As David McWilliam said, we have an abnormal problem, so we need an abnormal response, and we're not getting it yet.
Thanks, Pat. Kieran, have you an opinion on whether some things should happen sooner than others? You know, obviously, I mean, what I'm hearing and what you guys are telling me is that simply things aren't happening fast enough.
But I think that's the easy answer, is should things happen sooner? They absolutely should happen sooner. Colin, if right now the banks and supports, and we got all the financial assistance and everything, if we literally had the magic wand and the genie and we got from the banks and the government full support, it still would be a huge challenge to re-engineer the businesses in the time frames that we need to, as Pat said, 7 weeks there for possibly for the pubs. And if you look at hospitality business, hotels, you've got to retrain staff, you've got to do those setup that I spoke earlier about. So it really is urgent, and there needs to be clarity, and there needs to be hard decisions taken. And procrastination and pushing it onto the long finger, we ain't got a long finger here. So we need decisions quickly. Regarding the supports, as I mentioned, you know, in my mind, we've 3 sets of supports. We've the setup, and at one stage, I thought last Saturday there was a mention of some degree of a 10,000 setup a fund availability. It's ambiguous as well, not sure whether it was for business, a business, for a company, was it for individual units of a company, or was it literally coming at all? But there's going to be a significant cost in that. So the setup would be something that would be, I think, absolutely mandatory, because there are decisions by businesses, and one of the decisions is to reopen or not. And if you look at the forecasting, which I'm currently doing, and like we're starting, and this is a bit of this with a little bit of obviously evidence-based, but you know, we're starting probably around closer to 30 to 40% of last year. And even with that 30 to 40%, that probably in the revenue side needs a little bit of dealing to be accounted for there, because there are going to be incentives needed. So with that type of income coming in, we're definitely going to need support. We're going to need support on the setup. We're going to need support then on a lot of the cost base, and to be mentioned by the guys there on rates or utilities or insurance and all of that. And one of the dangers is that we all look at each other and see who will go first here. And we all sort of hesitate, because actually the person that goes earliest is probably, could be with the biggest opportunity, but could also be at the biggest risk. So that's an issue. And then finally, the working capital area, like there needs to be an availability of that, and there needs to be also that the terms are a bit more favorable than being talked about, like trying to pay back that over a couple of years. And if you have it and you can do it, great. But if you haven't got it, which is more probable, is it should be a longer term. So that blend of mixes that are there is needed, and probably for different businesses, I'm looking at 25 people on the screen here now at the moment, is different businesses will need something different, but it does need leadership again, and it needs urgency. That's part of the issue, is if it goes at the pace that it's going at now, more people are not going to reopen, which digs a bigger hole for us all and for the country.
Thank you, Kieran. So look, that leads me on to the next question I have. You spoke about re-engineering and retraining and looking at our businesses. So the next question I have is, what do you think your business or your sector and the businesses in your sector is going to look like over the next 12 months? And of the changes you make, what do you think will stay for better or for worse? And can I put this to you first, Pat? Like, do you see a situation whereby, you know, as we do with restaurants now, where you book a table and you book a slot, that people might look at bars, or bars might look at how they operate, and you might have to go and book a table in a bar for a couple of hours going forward?
Yes, it's going to be very different, and I suppose, Colin, that the honest answer is none of us know, but we have to try and project forward and try and see. And certainly the starting position is that you will not be in a pub unless you have a seat, and there's even a question of, can you have a seat at the bar? You cannot interact with people that didn't come in with you, and this is the whole thing of a bar, as we understand it, is a melting pot where you move between groups, you meet people and catch up with people and all sorts of things that you can't do. In effect, every bar is going to be a lounge in our old understanding of the lounge, that you're sitting in a group. It's very hard to interact with other people anyway, particularly if you're sitting low, and the whole thing is just going to be very difficult. And as well as that, even if the conditions were less onerous, people themselves are going to have fear. You see it at the minute, that people walking down the street and they're nearly stepping back for someone to pass who is already more than 2 meters away from them. There's just this latent fear in the public, and it could translate, one, into will they come in at all, and two, if they do, will they be comfortable and stay long, or will it be a good experience? It's certainly going to be a very different experience, and we just don't know at what point the health people will be able to say, at all, or will they say at all that, look, we don't need to be as careful anymore. We're after beating this thing back, and we can go back to normal, and we don't know if the old normal will ever come back.
Thanks, Pat. Kieran, can I ask you? I mean, do you see, you know, in Butler House or in the Kenny Ormond Hotel or in places that people are used to going in and sitting down and maybe spending hours over a cup of coffee? Do you see that people will look at potentially charging an entry price or having a minimum spend?
Well, I think from the consumer, we've spoken a good bit about the trade and government there, but from the consumer right now, the consumer is nervous, and Pat has alluded to that there, is there's a lot of uncertainty around, and certainly, you know, I've christened it myself the swerve walk. The amount of people, or maybe it's just me, but people that are approaching are just taking this wide swerve, and some of it is well beyond even 2 meters, nearly going up in front of traffic because there's just that nervousness around. I think we've got to, this is part of the dilemma, we've got to actually incentivize people to come in. So by charging or making too many barriers is obviously, it's almost alien, because we're all business people and we're trying to actually put the product in danger of being bought rather than putting up barriers. Where the barriers will come from is the social distancing or physical distancing. So when you ask the question of what it will look like, this is going to be not just the next, you know, like in my head I was thinking is that this year, for the rest of this year, was just survival and getting back, if you can get back to work. Then next year was a recovery year, and then beyond was whenever that might be, is the new normal. Not normal, because the old normal may never be the same again, but some degree of new normal. So I think for the hospitality business, so I just take ours very, very briefly, is we've got bed and breakfast. Like, we probably would be looking at, you know, a completely different, like in Butler House here, a lot of people enjoy the garden, looking out the window, seeing the castle, all of that. And now we probably would start with being anti what's been working in the past, which is we'd probably try and deliver a box breakfast to the room. See what way that would start. If we are going to be in restaurant, we're going to have, if we're lucky enough to have more space, or else if we work within the same space, we're going to have less people there with the 2 meter rule. Our second chunk of business is the food area. So that's been spoken about already by the guys. But again, social distancing is going to be a big part of that. And already we're seeing the move towards takeaway rather than sit down. And the last one, events for a lot of our hotels, weddings and events, well, that's even the biggest challenge, because if you think of, and we've all been part of the Irish wedding, and you could sum it up, if we're all asked to write down 3 or 4 words, we'd probably say food, drink, socializing, dancing, and it'll be very interesting. The old slow dance at 10 to 2 in the morning is going to be a bit difficult with the social distance rules, and God bless Morrison's, but it'll be certainly a challenge now. So getting our heads around all of that. And the real world, well, I say that in jest, is that real people, like, and this has probably been positive for us over the last couple of weeks, is there's brides, the most important day in their life, they're ringing up, they're between the rock and the hard place, they don't want to postpone, and their heart is telling them that, and then their head is saying, look, it ain't going to work. And certainly people that are bringing in people from overseas. So we're seeing that people are deferring rather than postponing. And the questions that they're asking, which again, Pat Crotty alluded earlier on, is at the moment, there is no clear direction on that regarding people sitting down for the dinner, or on bars. Like, you can't have the bar in the short term, and how is that all going to work? And the reality from the way we all operate is a wedding, if a wedding is in the afternoon and the dinner is at 6 o'clock, the behavior of consumers is slightly different at 6 o'clock than it is at 2 o'clock in the morning. And even just a simple thing, in Butler House is, toilets, people, will be, certainly as the night goes on, and, do we have bouncers on the toilets? Do we have to re-engineer the toilet sinks, urinals and all that? So this is the devil in the detail. The answer to the question is it's going to look a lot different. Businesses are going to look a lot different. I didn't even go into the visitor centre there, but they're going to look a lot different. And I do think, Pat, that the opportunity probably is, there is a little bit about re-engineering your business. And sometimes when you have a burning platform, things that might have been, maybe we should get to that, but we haven't got the time, or we just don't think we'll have enough, to push us through that. Maybe we can re-engineer them for better as well. And I think certainly in the digital area, there's an opportunity to digitally transform our businesses as well.
Okay. Thank you, Kieran. I think I've got about 5 minutes left, John. Would that be, okay, I'm all right. So just to put the last question, I'll start with you, Colin. I suppose in crisis and emergencies that we've dealt with in recent memory, tourism has generally been one of the first industries to be hit, but also one of the first industries to recover from it. And it looks to that like that won't be the case this time. What experiences do you think we can call on that gives us optimism that our industry will recover, and what can we do ourselves? And I suppose I was watching something the other day that the economist Alan Ahern was on, a great second name, and he mentioned that household saving in Ireland is going to increase by 5 billion this year. I mean, how do we get consumer confidence so that they can go and spend that money?
And I think in the same interview, Jim Deegan clarified that the external spend by Irish people abroad, which won't get to happen, runs at 7.2 billion. So there's a piece there that says surely they're going to be looking to spend that at home, and I have every confidence that they will. I've every confidence in the people that are on this Zoom call, the industry and the business. And I honestly believe we will get the cooperation and we will get the assistance that we need. I don't know, eternal optimism you may call me, but I believe the government will move there. They do have to be careful. There are big numbers they're talking about, but they just have to get their finger out of the dam now. I think they have to move on it. The rest of it, I think, leave it to us. You look at Pat Crotty's premises. You look at the changes that Pat has invoked down through the years. Pliable, flexible, will do what it takes to make the business work. That's what all people that are on this call will do. We'll do what it takes. I've no doubt that we'll be curtailed from being commercially viable, and therefore we'll need assistance. I think with hotels running at over 40% wage percentage, for example, I really think the wage subsidy is a good way to go, a strong way to look at it. And if we can get assistance in that area, I think we'll make a lot of other things work. That and the rates, they can't possibly look for rates while we're on a sinking ship. I think most businesses we know we're not going to make money this year. We just want to survive for better years. And that's really, I think, the message. Is a survival message, but I've every confidence that all those guidelines will come out, and I'd encourage everyone on this call to bear with all the representative bodies just for another little bit. I think clarity will come, and I've absolutely no doubt that whether it's perspex or masks or table booking systems or whatever else is needed, we will come up with them and we will make it work again. And so I have every confidence in that. But there are barriers, and central government in particular has to come along and work with us and realise the plight we're in. So I'm screaming about it, not because I really feel the industry is going to sink, but because I want the politicians to know. Consumers, I really believe that the consumers need confidence. Fear is what is abound in all of us at the moment. But once there's clear guidelines as to what businesses have to do to be able to operate, and then they have to be enforced strongly, the customer will become much more comfortable about the fact to come into our premises then, because they know we have to operate under a certain regime.
Thank you. Kieran, I'm conscious that people already spend a lot of money if the experience is right. I mean, I have a 17-year-old daughter that was devastated that you can't spend €400 to see some Korean boy band in London next summer. I mean, if we are able to create experiences and bundle experiences in Kilkenny, do you think that that's an opportunity for tourism and hospitality businesses to generate consumer confidence?
Of course, and we're not starting, like, we have to operate from today, but we're not starting from today. We have a lot of experience, as Colin Neville has said, in this area, and Kilkenny, and we're all proud of it, it's boxed above its weight. And I think now there's a clarity needed in what is Kilkenny offering in the new normal world. What exactly, and where do we actually play to our strengths? And like, if you look at, like, I was in Galway last year, and one of the things that just struck me was that there is a lot more open, like the River Walk, the castle grounds, and at that stage it was easy on the eye and it was pretty, but now it could actually be very valuable to be able to sell that to whichever world, and the world in the short term is going to be the domestic world. But there's a lot of people, and we won't know until we know. There's a lot of people, and there's going to be a percentage of people that are really nervous, so nervous, as Colin has mentioned, that they just, are stuck, and the safest place to be is on your own, within your own four walls. But there's a lot of people that want to take the door off the hinges. And even again the last week, the amount of people, since even last Friday, the calls that we've been getting, when are you open for business and can we book ahead? And I wouldn't, invest everything in that, but it's certainly good to know. So I think Kilkenny has a chance to be very clear and concise, because there is going to be a lot of competition. So whether it's Galway's, Westport's, any other, Dublin, whatever, they're all going to be, buy me, come to me. And what has got us to here has been helpful. It just needs maybe a bit of a deep breath to reposition that and to be very, very concise. Like the amount of information, some of it data rather than information, that's flying around on social media. So, that old adage is, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, is that we need to be really precise in what we're offering. And if we can get people to come, then all the support businesses are obviously going to avail of that. And there is a return, like there's loads of economic studies done of the value of whether it be festivals or sporting occasions or cities and what they do. So there is a return to the government. And there will be a return to the government in Ireland if Kilkenny is playing an active part here. And part of the active part is what comes first here, chicken or egg. But probably what comes first is clarity, getting people to actually make the hard decisions. They're not easy decisions. I don't envy them the decisions, but they got to make the decisions quickly and get on with it.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Pat, we've 2 minutes left. I'm going to leave the last word to you. Do you think that tourism in Kilkenny is better placed to bounce back quicker than other towns and cities? And what do the local authority and us as an industry need to do to ensure that's the case?
Well, the first answer is yes. Colin, you as chairman or former chairman of Kilkenny Tourism and a long-time activist will know the same as I do, that we have always lamented the fact that the vast bulk of visitors who come to Kilkenny are actually Irish and not foreign. We always lament that we don't get our share of the foreign spend. Well, that is going to be our strongest asset over the next 12 or 18 months, because for the vast bulk of the population who are at work or working from home and earning their full salary and earning their full holiday entitlements, they're all busting to go on their holidays and will be. And Kilkenny needs to put its best foot forward and make sure that we have, from the industry, from the local authority, from everyone, have the most attractive offer that we can have so that they come here. And the vital piece to them coming here and causing other people to come here is that they come here and they feel safe. I think the biggest first thing that we have to address they're safe, whether they're in a bedroom in the Ormond or having a meal in Butler House or doing whatever, shopping on the high street or anywhere else, that they feel safe and they have a good time. Normally they do that anyway, so we have a lot going for us, but we just need to make sure that we galvanize that opinion.
That's great. Thank you, Pat. There's definitely going to be a serious body of work needed in 2 years' time with regard to increasing international visitors into Kilkenny. Yeah, with a shadow of a doubt. Look, that's it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to us. I'd particularly like to thank Colin Neville, chairperson of the Irish Tels Federation Southeast Branch, Ciarán Conroy, CEO of the Civic Trust, and Pat Crowley, owner of Paris, Texas. I really, really appreciate your time this afternoon having a chat with me. I hope everyone found it interesting. And at this point, I'd like to pass back to John Hurley, I think, who's going to take over. I think we're going to run a little poll and I'm just going to say a few final words.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to launch a poll. Nobody gets away. You don't get a free lunch. Well, you're not getting any lunch at all today, but nobody gets away without having to do some bit of work. So I'd ask you to give us your feedback. We have a question there. If the restaurants open again on the 29th of June, which is the planned phase 3 of what they have, which answer will be the one for you? Will you be happy eating out again? Would you prefer to avoid it? Or have you just got so used to takeaways that you'll never go to a restaurant again? So if you'd answer that, they're on your keypads, as they say, on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we'll see what the majority of you think. We'll just give it 1 or 2 seconds while I also reiterate what Colin has said. Thank you all very much for taking the time to be part of our session today. I hope you found it useful. Our chamber chats are very much aimed at networking, giving people an opportunity to see and chat with other people. This facility online goes a long way to helping in that regard. It's not the same as us all being in a room together, but listen, we'll get back to that space in due course. In the meantime, it's great to see you guys on screen. It's great to hear from our speakers. It's great to hear different views and opinions. And it's great to see that people are keeping the sunny side out and chins up and so on and so forth. We're running these chamber chats once a week, every Thursday at 1 o'clock for roughly the 40-minute mark. And we will try and have topics of interest and relevance to you, so and constant variety in them as well. So next week, Thursday the 14th of May will be our next one, and we're going to explore the whole area of e-commerce. Okay, what is that? Come next Thursday and find out. What will we be saying about it? Who knows? But do come along and be part of it. So now I'm sharing the results of our poll, and you can see there that the majority of us will be happy to go back to using restaurants. 59% are looking forward to the opportunity. And maybe I'll hand back to Marion to say a final few words and close us off for the session.
Thanks, John. Just want to reiterate our thanks to our panelists today and to Colin for overseeing that panel discussion. I think one of the overarching repeated words that I picked up was confidence. Confidence from the consumer is a huge thing, but as leaders and as business operators, we have to be confident when we do reopen that Kilkenny is a safe place for the customers to eat, to shop, to visit our attractions. And I think if we can be a best practice destination in terms of the safety that we're offering to customers and our confidence in delivering that safety, I think that will go a long way to helping us come back. It's hugely challenging, but I know Kilkenny has a wealth of knowledge and great cooperation between sectors and local authority as well. So just thanks to everyone again. Mind your mental health, of course. It's a very challenging time for those that are at home and stuck at home. But we're here for you. So if you need anything, just please do get in touch. Thanks again to our panelists for coming on today. Great knowledge, great wealth of experience there across the panel. So that's much appreciated as well. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.